Network is absolutely free. Just search.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. I hope you guys enjoyed those last couple of segments. We are sticking with this kind of theme of touchdown totals, but switching to the more negative side of things. These players had fantastic seasons last year, but I don't think they're going to replicate it. ESPN does not either. Looking at the stats, there's certainly a lot of caveats to how this will plan out, how these players will score less touchdowns than expected. And so without further ado, let's jump right into the segment. Starting off with a duo, a running back duo who really impressed last year, mainly due to their speed and their abilities in a Miami Dolphins offense that really coveted that skill set. Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. First, let's just talk about these two very diverse players in the system, right? You have Raheem Mostert, whose game really has aged well. He's his age 32 season, but I really don't see the longevity side of it, especially as someone who is predicated himself on running fast and in having speed be the determining factor in how he performs. And then you have Achane, who's a young rookie, who was a young rookie last year, kind of came onto the scene as one of the better running backs in the league, who also is the speedster kind of back. So that's the big question about both of these guys. Like, speed is an important asset, but how important is it? Especially in a Miami Dolphins offense that isn't struggling for speed. And so all of these kind of factors seep in, and then the stats truly back it up. There's a gap between expected and actual rush yards from Mostert. Achane, also not many carries inside the 5-yard line. That's another big thing. Running backs get more highly valued the closer they are to the red zone. A lot of the big runs that Mostert and Achane broke off were very long runs where they had a lot of open field ahead of them. And so I really feel as if you should take someone like Christian McCaffrey or a Breece Hall, who's effective not just in open space, but can finish the job close in. And so Mostert and Achane really don't necessarily have that factor to them. They're not kind of close range running backs where you know they're going to score from 5 yards out. All of their production comes from the open field. And sometimes it's nice to have. Sometimes, having a guy who can break out a nice big run is effective. But at the end of the day, I feel like the running back position is where you can really covet touchdowns, because getting a nice big gain is nice, but it only gets you like first down point production in terms of fantasy. Touchdowns are much more highly coveted in terms of the running back position. And so look for you to fade Mostert and Achane once the season starts. Then you have a guy in Jalen Hurts, actually, in terms of rushing production, who, now that Saquon Barkley is in the city of brotherly love, Hurts is definitely going to have his rushing abilities come into question, especially on the brotherly shove. That's the most effective play for any quarterback in terms of not only real life but fantasy as well. And should Saquon get more touches inside the 5-yard line, as I expect that he will, Jalen Hurts and the brotherly shove could be no more. There could only be a couple during games. He still has 53 career rushing touchdowns, 15 of them last year. But a lot of that is going to come down to the balance of Jalen Hurts as a runner and Saquon Barkley as a runner, because they're two very different runners. Jalen Hurts at speed and electricity in the open field. Saquon Barkley has a bit of strength to that as well. And so, looking at the combination, it's certainly an interesting duality to see who will really carry the torch as the rusher, the lead rusher inside the 10-yard line. And I don't necessarily see Hurts as that guy anymore, because Saquon has been so effective throughout his career, whether it be in the red zone and also as a receiver in the red zone. And so, yeah, I think that Hurts is definitely going to be hurt in that department. That being said, I still think he's going to be a high-end fantasy QB because of the fact that he still has weapons that he can pass to. He just needs to pass to them effectively. And then you have another quarterback in Josh Allen, who also is going to kind of come down because the stats in terms of rushing, he actually was the one with the 53 career rushing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts has 38 rushing touchdowns over the past 3 seasons. But I feel as if Josh Allen's style of running is much more desperate than people think. I don't think Allen wants to be as much of a rushing quarterback as people expect. A lot of it just comes down to his ability to be more physical than the defender in front of him. And so, as the opportunities arise for Josh Allen, he takes them. And this year, I feel as if, that avenue is still open to him. It's definitely his worst receiving core he's had, so therefore he might not place as much trust in them as usual. But overall, I feel as if Josh Allen kind of needs to take things as they come a little bit more, because that's another big thing about him, the turnovers. You always take Josh Allen at the top end of the quarterback discussion with a grain of salt, because you know he's going to put up big stats, but you know he's going to turn the ball over. And a lot of that is stemming from how he runs the football. He's not necessarily the most protective running quarterback, You think of guys like Lamar, you think of guys like even Hurts. They protect the ball pretty well. And you can't say the same about Josh Allen. So he's going to have to become a much more risk-averse rusher and a player as a result. So therefore, his gaudy stats that he's been putting up in terms of rushing abilities should regress to the mean a little bit this year, because not only is he going to want to focus more on getting these wide receivers up to speed and really focusing on the passing game as a whole, I just think he wants to calm himself down to get out of those situations where, he feels like he has no choice to run, but to run. And then, last but not least, Javonte Williams, I believe is the player. I just wrote Williams down. Don't know why. I believe it's Javonte Williams. I feel as if Javonte Williams was one of those players last year who really overperformed because of the simplified nature of what the Denver Broncos offense became. I think that overall, he really wasn't one of those running backs who succeeded individually. I feel like it was more of a concerted effort to get the Denver Broncos offense ticking. Because without him, the Denver Broncos offense, without him being the centripetal force of the Denver Broncos offense, rather, I feel like a lot of what made Javonte Williams so good last year was that he just got a lot of touches by force and by nature. He was 16th in touches last year, 3rd in touchdowns, 6th with carries inside the 5-yard line. And so, this goes to show that the Denver Broncos offense has changed so much, because I feel like Sean Payton last year, in terms of expanding the field for Russell Wilson, really leaned into Williams a lot more. But now that Sean Payton's got his guy in Bo Nix, who he firmly trusts and believes can lead this team and this offense, I think that Javonte Williams' production will just go down because of that aspect of it. I mean, Bo Nix certainly isn't going to hit the ground running, but Sean Payton will certainly be more reliant on him than people expect. I think that the Denver Broncos really have a solid running back room to rely upon and lean upon should Bo Nix struggle, but I feel like Sean Payton feels a little bit like Bo Nix is the next big thing, and I don't see it. And I feel like Javonte Williams shouldn't be on this list, because I think that when he gets touches, he's really effective. And when he gets touches, good things happen. I think he also more ways than one, expands it more now for Bo Nix than he did with Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson actually had, certain traits that actually made him pop in this Denver Broncos offense. And so replacing it with Bo Nix certainly puts a wrench in how people are going to view Javonte Williams, when in fact he should be more highly coveted than people will need him to be. And so at the end of the day, Javonte Williams really feels like an outlier on this list because fate of circumstance led him to this point. And going over this list, in all reality, having these two rushing quarterbacks and then one running back room that really predicates itself on one trait, and one guy who's just kind of left by the wayside a little bit, it's really interesting to view. Because when you think about players who score less touchdowns, your mind immediately goes to running backs. But this year, this running back market is really going to become befuddling, because you really don't know who and what to value and how to place that value in meaningful ways, how to balance the running backs you're looking for in fantasy. I can immediately understand why most of Achane will definitely decrease in terms of touchdown total. They're not going to have as many 60-yard touchdown runs. But when I think about Hurts and Allen and Williams, these are all guys, even though Williams is the only running back, who add so much value in terms of red zone touches, in terms of how the offense opens up for them. And so I think it's really confusing to see someone like Williams. That being said, I'm not necessarily docking any points for what ESPN thinks. This is just my own opinion coming into view of these kind of 5 players, because they're all so different in what makes them so confounding to diagnose. And so at the end of the day, the bottom line is you're going to have to pick and choose your poison in terms of the running backs, and in terms of also how quarterbacks are going to be valued in terms of rushing. So at the end of the day, I think this segment was very nice to kind of dissect what to look for in terms of running backs and rushing quarterbacks in terms of touchdown value. But that will just about do it for this segment. Coming next, we go back to the NBA for a little bit and back to this rookie class. We will be assessing the Summer League in terms of fantasy. Which of these rookies is going to really step into a big role in their first year? We'll be back to discuss that on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast.